Hola amigos, ¿qué tal? Stuart here from Spain Speaks with an update video today. We'll have a bit of a chat while I go for a walk with my dog Mia about what has been happening in Spain over the last week or so. So let's go. Now I'll get the weather out of the way, but what's that expression that an image is worth 1,000 words? So I'll turn the camera around and that image pretty much sums up the weather that we have currently here in Portugal. It's damp, there's a sea mist rolling in, and visibility around 50 or 60 meters, I would say. So not a day for the beach, it seems to me, but it might clear up as the day progresses. So we'll see. So what's been going on in Spain over the last week or so? Well, it's all about the economy. Some interesting information about the economy published yesterday or the day before, and the Spanish economy in the second quarter slowed down. 0.4% was the growth in that second quarter, and quite a bit of difference compared to the first quarter where the economy was going fairly well. So slowing down, but apparently, and the positive spin on this that the temporary government that we have in Spain is saying is that it's better than other European economies. 0.4% growth in the second quarter, better than other European economies. So that gives you an idea of how those other European countries are going with regard to their economies. Now, there was some more important data published earlier in the week, this time related to unemployment, and Spain's unemployment rate is down to 11.6%. Now, I know what you're thinking, 11.6%, it sounds fairly high, but in Spain, 11.6% is a good figure, and it's the lowest unemployment figure since 2008. So we have to go back almost 15 years to get a similar unemployment figure. I'll repeat the number, 11.6%. And the caretaker government, of course, the government that has been in power for the last 4 years, patting themselves on the back about this figure. But let's be honest, it is summertime in Spain and Portugal, and when the summer rolls around, lots of people get seasonal jobs. And I suppose that that is one of the reasons why that figure is so low, or so low at least for Spanish standards. Now, the other big thing that has been dominating news in Spain over the last week or so is the election results. As we know, a very close election. There were some surprises in that election, of course, especially with what happened to the far right vote, the Vox vote, which came down. They didn't get the same results that they got back in 2019. And a very surprising result for the incumbent Prime Minister, Pedro Sánchez, who, as I said the other day, managed to pull a rabbit out of his hat. Some of the European press, for example, the Guardian newspaper, is calling him a political genius for getting that result against all odds, considering that his party was absolutely smashed back in May in those regional and local elections. But I think there's a difference when it comes to what people vote for in national elections and what people vote for at a regional or local level, and that definitely seems to be the case. But whatever his tactics were, whatever his strategy was, it managed to pay off. There was a very heavy focus on that PP-Vox alliance that they would have to form to get into government. Making people scared about that was the PSOE party, and a lot of people no doubt fell for those scare tactics and didn't vote for Vox and voted for the PSOE. So maybe there was a protest vote there as well to keep the far right out of government, because let's be honest, not many people want to go back to far right governments in Spain because they have a history of that. Not really a recent history, of course. You have to go back to 1975 when that regime came to an end, but for some people it's still fresh in their minds, that type of government, and they didn't want anything to do with it. One of the important aspects about the elections this week, and what a lot of people were waiting for, was the foreign vote, what they call the foreign vote, Spanish people that are not residing in Spain. There's something like 3.3 million Spaniards not living in Spain who are on the electoral roll, and those votes were counted this week. And unfortunately, there was only around 10% of people who reside outside of Spain voted in those elections. So something like 330,000 votes were counted, and they were important. There was a decisive seat won by the Partido Popular, and of course that throws a spanner in the works for Pedro Sánchez, because it now means that he has to come to an agreement with Spanish fugitive or Catalonian fugitive Carles Puigdemont if he wants to form a government. And if he decides to jump into bed with Carles Puigdemont, I reckon it's going to be an unpopular decision, but time will tell. So as I said, some important votes counted this week, but I don't think anything is going to change regarding whether or not we're going to get a government over the next couple of weeks. I think that is going to be put off until September, maybe October. And as I said before, Pedro Sánchez will have to ask Mr. Puigdemont for help, or at least that's what the Spanish press is saying. And remember that August is a dead month in Spain. Very difficult to get things done in August, very difficult to get things done in December, and also difficult to get things done next month, because remember, August is just around the corner. Now, another thing that caught my attention in the press in Spain this week is the future of still opposition leader Mr. Feijos, Alberto Núñez Feijos, and his future up in the air, even though the party says that they are standing by their man. All of the important members of the Partido Popular at a regional level, for example, people like Mr. Moreno down there in Andalusia, Ms. Ayuso in Madrid, have given their support publicly to Mr. Feijos, but I wonder how long that support will last. And one of the things that they are saying is that they want him to be tougher, especially when it comes to Vox. They want him to try and get rid of Vox with tougher policies, because people obviously vote for Vox because they don't feel that their voices are being heard inside the PP. So they want a tougher line, apparently, and we'll see if Mr. Feijos can deliver, because as we know, there are people waiting to fill his shoes, most notably Ms. Ayuso, the Madrid president. But then again, why would you give up a cushy job like the Madrid presidency to try to become leader of the nation, which is a lot more difficult? Now, the next thing that has caught my attention in the press over the last week or so is the topic of fires, wildfires, forest fires, bushfires. It seems that every year around this time I talk about this topic, and as we have seen in various European countries, for example, Greece, I think Italy has had a problem recently. The north of Africa, Tunisia, I think has a problem with fires this year. We saw in Canada the serious problems that they have been having with fires. And of course, here in Portugal, people are waiting with bated breath to see what the fire season is going to look like this year. The other day, a fire broke out in Cascais, which is close to Lisbon, popular tourist place. And of course, the international press, the British press, were asking the question, is Portugal a safe place to travel to, given the history of fires in this country and given that recent fire down there in Cascais? I think the authorities managed to get that one put out fairly quickly, but as we know, another serious fire could be just around the corner, because it has been dry in this part of the world. And when you get those hot temperatures, strong winds, we know that fires can be a problem, especially when basically every tree in the country is either a pine tree or a eucalyptus tree. They go up very, very quickly indeed. So hopefully fires won't be a problem this summer in Portugal or in Spain either. But given recent years and the amount of fires that we have had in both countries, that can't be guaranteed at this point. And the final thing I'll talk about today is the upcoming visit to Portugal by the Pope, El Papa, as they call him in Spanish. And as we know, he's coming to Lisbon soon, and also to Fatima, and border controls have been again placed at the airport, at ports, and also on the Spanish-Portuguese border. And I was reading an interesting story in the Portuguese press yesterday, and some 65 people have been turned away from Portugal because they don't have the correct documentation. And I thought, if 65 people have been caught in around a week and a half not having the correct paperwork to get into the country, how many people come into Portugal illegally when there are no border controls, because remember, in Schengen, there are no border controls. And this is an anomaly, border controls being placed again in order to keep the country safe when the Pope is here, and 65 people being turned down, 12 at the airport and the rest crossing that Portuguese-Spanish border. So some interesting things going on there. And it is one of the big things that law enforcement officers complain about in Spain. If you talk to people in the civil guard, they complain about the fact that there are no borders. It makes it very easy for criminal activity to happen, cross-border criminal activity. They come down into Spain from France, they cross the border from Portugal, they commit their crimes and they slip back over the border. And apparently, according to what people say, it's difficult to get on board with the local police in those countries, whether it's in France, difficult to get the information from those police officers, and in Portugal, difficult to get information from the Portuguese police. So that's what some police officers complain about when it comes to crime in Spain, that they have trouble catching criminals because they just slip in to another country very easily and then don't get the cooperation from the local police. But as I said, it's only a temporary measure. The border controls are only in place until the Pope leaves, and then we will go back to the open border system and anything goes. On that note, I'll wrap the video up. Questions and comments, please leave them in the section below. If you have an opinion on any of the topics that I have spoken about today, the comment section is the place for you. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it, thumbs down if you didn't. I'll see you in the next one. Hasta luego, or até logo from Portugal.